What's going on, everybody? This is LA Chris in with Panthers Dustin to do a 2021 XFF draft recap. We want to start off just talking about kind of bigger things that we, stand back meta things that we observed in the draft this year. One of those things that we think we both observed was the quarterback creep that's happening in the leagues right now. On the AFC side, 5 quarterbacks went off by the end of the second round. What did that look like on the NFC, Dustin?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me, Chris. Carolina Panthers, for those who don't know, see me in the chat a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing we were kind of pre-huddling about in this meeting was quarterbacks. Wow. Trevor Lawrence going at 7. I mean, on the NFC side, you're talking about Justin Fields at 11. That's 2 guys in the first round. That's unheard of. I remember getting Lamar Jackson late in the second round a couple years back. So there's definitely been a shift. I took Trey Lance at 2-1, so maybe I'm guilty of kind of riding that wave. But I just think that when you can address that position, as important as it is in XFF, if you can get something with a rushing floor, I see the value there. So I think maybe it might have been more of kind of this class. You got Lawrence, who's mobile, Fields is mobile, Lance is obviously mobile. So I think part of it was, yes, there's a change in dynamic, but also I think it was a very unique running back or quarterback class where they're more like running backs.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody's chasing the next Lamar Jackson, the next Josh Allen, the next Mahomes isn't really a huge scrambler, but he'll get you, he can move, And I think everybody is really seeing the value in that. I think that the league is starting to see the value of rookie contracts and the price difference versus going out in free agency and trying to pick up a quarterback. And I think all of those things are driving the rise in draft position of the quarterbacks. And I think it makes sense. I'm not against it. I remember last year, Jacksonville traded up and got Burrow, and I took Tua not long after him in the first. And that was fairly rare. Like that, people made comments about 2 quarterbacks going even in the back half of the first. And then we look at this year and it's 108, 114, 115, 201, 215 on the AFC side. So yeah, I think that all those things are driving this. And I think it's justified. They probably won't all work out. But neither do a lot of first round running backs that we take in the leagues, and neither always do first round wide receivers. So I think it's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Burrow. I actually traded, I had a first round teed up with John last year to move my 2-1 for Burrow. That's what he wanted. I ended up holding off and drafting Rager there, thinking that I was getting the last, big money guy off the board for the position player. So I kind of valued the position player a little bit higher than quarterback, at least Burrow, because of the non-rushing impact. But yeah, to your point, it's the first time we've really seen a quarterback on that fringe of the first round. And this year we've got 6 of them in between the 2 divisions. So definitely something to watch out for in the future, folks. Quarterback prices are going up.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about positionally. This kind of linebacker creep also. Linebacker has always been a very important position in XFF. But this year on the AFC, we had Cam taking Micah Parsons as high as 1.04.
Yeah. And I know when I was standing there with the 110 in my back pocket and having Cam draft Parsons at 1.4, I got real nervous that Parsons was going to make it to me at 10. I started to think, oh man, this isn't going to work out for me. Getting Harris at 1, I was thinking I want to get that linebacker. I think I may have started that trend a couple years ago, drafting Devin White, I think number 2 overall. And the way he's panned out last year, I took the Baltimore guy in the top 5. Again, I ended up trading him to John, but in that Barkley deal. But another linebacker that I hit on early in the draft. And so I think this is, to your point, the new wave. If you can get a good every down linebacker, he's just as valuable as an every down running back. And that's kind of been the mold for these teams who have been winning the XFF championships. They've got strong running back groups, 3 guys they can plug in, And then they've got a core of linebackers who are scoring Boku points, tackle machines. And so, yeah, the same thing on the NFC side. We've seen Parsons going off the board first. That was me at 10. I was happy to get him. Green Bay took OKJ. That's the easiest way to say it. Trying to pronounce that name. No, thank you. And then Jamin Davis went to the commissioner at 14. Collins went 15. I mean, so to your point, there was that run. Those big four guys went off the board in the first round. And it let some of that running back positional talent drop down the board a little bit and create some value there in the early first round or
Yeah,
second round rather.
absolutely. You know, and on that same note about the linebackers, those every down tackle monsters, part of this linebacker creep, I feel like we've seen some outside linebackers creep higher than they should. Say what you want about Joe Tryon. I think he's great. I've got him in other leagues, but you know, he's on MLF right now. He's a linebacker. Then you've got Azeez Ojulari that went fairly high, and Jason Owe that went fairly high on both sides. And it's kind of like quarterbacks. I understand the creep that's going on here, and I think it's justified, but I'm not sure that some of these guys fit the mold.
No, exactly. And I think people get wrapped up in the linebacker and they're looking for a linebacker. But second thing you need to understand is what linebacker role are they playing? And if you're looking at outside linebacker guys who aren't getting sacks, aren't getting pressure, who are playing more in that, cover scheme, that's not very valuable. It's not the guy you want to have in your lineup every week. Similar with Chubb in my lineup, where he's more of a sack guy. If he doesn't get sacked, he's not getting a lot of tackles. It's high risk, high reward. And those are the types of guys that I don't think you should be gambling on early on in the draft, because you need someone that's going to hit, and to your point, the middle linebackers are bringing up the value, and then there's some reaching going on for some of these outside guys.
Right. And then, we talked about running backs too and how important they are. And looking at both sides, I mean, from the mid-second through the fourth, I mean, we've got Carter, Gainwell, Hubbard, Hawkins, Jefferson, Stevenson, Mitchell, Dokes, Herbert, this huge middle group of running backs that I don't know. I got a lot of questions about most of them. I think probably the most valuable one out of all of them is Stevenson. Maybe Hubbard if something happens there in Carolina. Yeah, and I'm guilty of taking some of these guys too. But yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe that is like some of us should think about doing less of taking these,
I mean, getting handcuffed running backs with early round draft picks, I don't think is a winning strategy.
Yeah.
You can even flash it back to kind of a redraft philosophy. Nobody is grabbing handcuffs till really, really late in the draft. And even some of the starters are falling to the middle rounds. So you just have to understand the value of a starting every down tier monster. There's only a handful of those guys. And then there's this other tier where you can expect kind of every week production. You're not going to get blow up weeks, but you're going to get a nice safe floor. And then it's everybody else. And so that everybody else groups are all these backups, these handcuffs, these part-timers, need injury dependent roles.
Right.
And if people want to reach for those guys earlier and earlier in the draft, I'm all for it. I think some of the problem, with what we've seen this year specifically was out of the draft, a lot of players' values kind of suppressed a little bit. Think about a guy like Bateman. He had a really high value, probably number 2 receiver coming into the season. He gets drafted in Baltimore and his value kind of tanks. Then he gets injured, right? But it was more so the tanking of the position. He fell down the board in the draft. I think he ended up going in the early second round when he could have been a potential first rounder. I think some of that is because of the reaching on the linebacker. Some of that's the reaching on the quarterback or that new progression. So you can actually find values with this new scheme. And I think Arizona got him at 2.7, Rashad Bateman. And so I think that was a tremendous value. So within all this, these different roles being elevated, these different positions getting more priority, you can find value in receiver like Marshall at 6, Bateman at 2.7, even a guy like St. Brown at 2.12 who's coming out of camp strong. So it's the yin and yang. Next year it could be a complete and utter flip. People
Yeah,
chasing those receivers again.
right. I think everybody's chasing Robinson from last year. The Jets on the AFC picked up Robinson in the supplemental draft.
So did I.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
it was
Awesome.
the 1-2 supplemental. I got him.
Now, what clued you into that? Just out of curiosity, what?
Well, yeah, honestly, I had a lot of Leonard Fournette in my other leagues. He's a guy that I followed closely, and I knew things weren't going well in camp there. And Armstead was the guy who was supposed to be the next guy in line, and felt good with him. I had him as a handcuff in a lot of places, and then he had the COVID situation, so he was falling off the radar. And then there was another guy there that was supposed to be in the mix, and he got injured. And next thing you know, it was like James Robinson. His profile's great. Everything looks good. He's going to have an every down role, behind Fournette. I mean, that was the assumption.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the Fournette thing, the fallout from that was like, all right, it's James Robinson. This is the guy. Nobody in the mainstream media fantasy world wanted to come out and put their name on James Robinson, right? It was a very slow creep. There wasn't this.
Who was the other running back there?
Yeah, besides Armstead, there was. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. For some reason, I can't think of his name.
He's got kind of an odd name. It's not like unpronounceable or anything, but I'm just blanking on it.
Yes.
I just remember hearing a lot of people talking him up.
Yep, but I think he had some kind of nagging injury that close to camp that was pushing him out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's not even on the roster anymore, whoever it was.
Yeah. Divine something, or I don't know.
Yeah, Obenewali.
Divine Azigbo. There it is. Divine
Azigbo.
Yeah, everybody's talking that guy up.
Yep. But nobody in the mainstream came out and said Robinson's the guy. So I think he continued to stay under the radar all the way up to the season. So it was a great find for me to get him at 1-2. I love that supplemental pick. The year before, I got Preston Williams in like 1-2 or something like that.
Yeah.
He was the flash in the pan guy, derailed by injuries, obviously. But people fall asleep on the supplemental. And this year, I think I got Funk, the linebacker from LA, who's competing with Xavier Jones for the backup role behind Henderson now with Akers out. So there's some value there again. Maybe 3 years in a row, I'm striking gold in the supplemental draft. So,
I love the supplemental draft. I don't understand people fading it entirely. I mean, some guys fade it entirely.
To go before the draft and say, I'm not picking anybody, just seems reckless.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a free taxi cut.
Exactly. What are you risking? Yeah. It's a zero risk, 100% reward upside play. But please, teams, continue to punt it. That's fine.
Yeah. So something that we've noticed also, then that's kind of what started the impetus for this whole conversation and show.
Finally!
Rounds 1, 2, and even parts of 3, and certain position groups like those mid-tier running backs, those real questionable running backs. Rounds 1 and 2 on both sides were very similar. I mean, slight differences in draft position. A lot of those mid-tier running backs were very similar on both sides. But as we started to get further into round 3 and then into 4, and especially in the later rounds, you started seeing some wide disparities between where players were going. And we both thought that was kind of interesting. And, I thought, hey, let's do a show about that. And then on top of that, let's reach out to all these GMs who took the players in question and try to get them to throw in some participation and hopefully, keep it kind of lighthearted and make it kind of fun, not so much they're being interrogated, is to, justify your pick, but just talk about it a little bit and, maybe talk shit about your conference because they let them fall so far, or talk shit about the other conference for taking them way too high. So we did not have as much participation as I had hoped for, but a lot of guys submitted some really solid stuff. So we're just going to kind of start going down the list. If there's some of these players where we're going to get either GM to submit anything, and we're going to mention them so we can give the GM some shit, but we're not going to go deep on the conversation for these guys. Okay. So the first player in question was Joe Tryon. He went in the 2.03 on the AFC with the New England Patriots. and he went 3.04 in the NFC, and that was Arizona taking him there. I got to say, after our conversation about outside linebackers earlier, I'm preferential to Arizona's side there.
So I was like,
but let me get up. Arizona was, he was great. He submitted a video, so I'm going to cue that up right now. Here we go.
So I was excited to draft Joe Tryon in the 3rd round. I think he was really a first-round pick. And the players ahead of him in Tampa, like JPP and Shaq Barrett, they're old, and I think he'll be reassigned to defensive end. So, and that's a big, important position in XFF. And we've seen those players like Bosa and Garrett go in round 1s in our drafts in the past. So I got my popcorn ready.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
NFC Arizona guy, I think Arizona's doing it the right way. He's from the Rinku school of thought. He's building methodically through positional advantages. And he's assuming he's going to get converted to DN and kind of fill that JPP older role. I know Barrett's like 30, but he just got a big deal, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But yeah, so I think it's more of a future pick for him, and that's really what you want to do in the 3rd round is you kind of want to speculate, And if he loses that outside linebacker designation and gets the DE, it is huge for his value. So
yeah, I think at 309 I'd be much more comfortable rolling those dice than at 203. But New England could not be reached for comment. The next player in question is Peyton Turner. Buffalo took him at 312 in the AFC, and he went at 508 in the NFC to the commish, Washington. So Buffalo actually he sent me a little blurb. He didn't submit a video, but he did write me something. So I'll go ahead and read that. He said, Chris, I needed another DE and Turner was available. The Saints drafted him in the 1st round. I only had 1 pick in the whole draft. That was 312. So I figured if he is good enough for the New Orleans Saints to take in round 1, he must be good enough for my 3rd round. So fair enough. The Saints definitely have need there. Who is it that they took a few years ago that just has not panned out worth a shit?
Oh yeah, they actually traded up. They traded up with Green Bay to get the guy. Davenport, was it?
Is it Marcus Davenport, right?
Yeah, Davenport. I remember when Green Bay traded that pick, and I was just like, oh man.
Yeah.
And then they took
he
Davenport.
Went high in XFF that year, and he haven't done shit. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was, I think that's fair logic at 312 for the Bills with the only pick they've got in the draft. I think getting the same player at 508 for Washington was really good. But yeah, I don't think that was a bad pick by Buffalo there.
No, I mean, I think Washington did a good job, and that's part of, kind of what we were looking at in this analysis was who's getting drafted on the AFC, where's he going on the NFC? And seeing a guy like that go, 3 rounds ahead, he must have felt like he got a really good steal, and he potentially may, but I don't know if it's necessarily a 2021 move, but those guys are cheap in the 5th round, and he should be able to hold on to them.
By the time, looking at the players on the board when the Bills took that player, I mean, Jalen Phillips came off, Kwity Paye, Gregory Rousseau, and then Turner. After Turner, Basham, and then Osai, Odiegbo. Yeah, so I don't think it was a bad pick. Next player on the list is Diami Brown. Houston took him at 315 in the AFC, and again, the commish took him at 217 in the NFC. Neither of them could be reached for comment.
Boo! You suck!
What do you think about Diami Brown? Do you think?
Yeah, good question. Diami Brown, there's a lot of hype from him, from his profile coming out, and I think initially I was scared off of Diami Brown based on the fact that they've got McLaurin there. They just went and paid Samuel a bunch of money to come over from Carolina. And then they got that older tight end who's been doing good. They got Gibson, who's a pass receiver. McKissick catches a lot of balls. And I was kind of afraid, does he have a role on that team? Like, can he sustain volume to be a startable player? And and I don't think he can initially, but now with Samuel being out on the COVID list and not getting back into camp and being way behind in a new offense, and we got Dami, he's playing with the first stringers in the preseason, caught a nice ball from Fitzpatrick last night. I think he's got the skill set that translates to the NFL. He's a big, strong, physical, get open, and he can get up and get the ball. I think it was a good pick. I think now it's a lot better pick than it was around draft time.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of worried about Samuel at this point. All the stuff you've mentioned that's been going on with them, and then also you keep hearing people talk about, is this the year that team, whatever team he's been on, unleashes Samuel and uses him to his full potential. And I think last year he got a little better used, but Rivera wasn't in Carolina anymore, and now he's back with Rivera. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Next player on the list was Elijah Mitchell, the San Francisco running back. He went at 4'11" in the AFC to Cincinnati, and he went at 5'15" on the NFC side to Atlanta. Atlanta and Cincy both submitted videos. So we will now cue those up and roll those. All right, here we go.
What up, boys? XFF cheers from Muskoka, Canada. Lovely detour. Muskoka beer. Oh, boys, this is the life. But I had to check in on our boy Elijah Mitchell. And I got to say, Purse, I don't know how you got that done, man, in the NFC. That is a great deal. I can't hate on it. I just can't. Without completely trashing the entirety of the NFC, I won't do that. I love you guys too much. But I will say, I'm pumped getting them where I got them. And I think at that point in the draft, in the fourth, it's like, what are you really getting? One takeaway I had, I guess, from the draft was, knowing those premium positions we have in XFF, running them down. It's running back, it's defensive end, it's linebacker, and Elijah Mitchell's a running back, so I don't think it's that bad taking him in the fourth. And I know it's crowded. It's crowded in San Fran. I hear you guys, but if you watch his tape at all, he's got it. He just has it. And his measurables, he's an athletic guy, tested through the roof. I really like what he can do in the future. He's a guy that I think could challenge Trey Sermon. Wilson being hurt, that was another factor. Ostert's always hurt. He's a speed guy, straight line speed, great. But all around running backs, they're hard to find. And I think Mitchell's going to be one of those guys. He at least has the upside to be. So I took my shot. I hope I didn't miss.
Yo, XFF, this is ATL, aka Sweet Percy, and I'm here to comment on the XFF rookie draft, which took place earlier this month. Today, we're going to spotlight draft pick Elijah Mitchell, whom I took in the 5th round with the 15th pick on the NFC side. On the AFC side, Cam selected Elijah Mitchell 1 round earlier in the 4th round with the 11th pick. Now, the question is, did he go early on the AFC side, or did he just slip on the NFC side? When I selected Elijah Mitchell, he seemed like the best available player to take a chance on in the 5th round that possibly has a chance to be a contributor this year. Now, in Cam's situation, when you draft rich and roster rich, you can go ahead and roll those dice because you don't have to worry about the baby needing a new pair of shoes. You saw Cam at the draft. He looked all comfortable, sitting up there with his bowl of pasta, salad, or whatever it was. Let Koo tell it, it probably was a bowl of honeydew melon. Regardless, Cam has I don't blame Cam for sweet talking all those GMs to acquire those assets. It reminds me of a old Twister lyric from back in the day where he said, "Spit more game than a mouthful of poker chips." And that probably describes Cam right there in the AFC. However, we don't know how this will turn out, but hopefully This draft pick will serve us both well. So stay tuned. Peace.
I love that.
Gotta
Bullet.
love it. Gotta love it. Gotta.
Yeah, those were two great videos by both of those guys. And yeah, I think Cam's right. I mean, at 4'11", even by 4'11", like what are you gaining or losing? Like all of these mid rounds are dart throws. All of these mid rounds are shooting for high upside. We're not shooting for floor in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. I think his buzz was a lot greater around the draft. I think Sermon's kind of supplanted himself now as, the guy with Wilson out significant time and Mostert being old and kind of a one-trick pony of sorts with an injury history. So we could see Mitchell. We could see Mitchell in like a McKinnon type role in the near future. So you never know. I think I agree. It's a good shot to take.
So the next player on the list was Kyle Trask. He went 4-12 in the AFC. He went 5-14 in the NFC. Pittsburgh took him AFC. Green Bay took him NFC. Neither of these guys responded and submitted anything.
Listen, let me say something to you as a friend. You suck. All right?
So, yeah, what do you think about Kyle Trask? You think Brady can't play 4 forever. But that doesn't mean that Trask is the guy next either,
Yeah, I don't think he ever gets a chance to play outside the preseason. Unless there's a significant injury to Brady this year. And I don't even think then. I think they go find somebody. So definitely one of those preferences. If you're feeling lucky, again, I think Cam hit it on the head. If you're going to roll dice, roll it on the positions that are really going to make the big deal. Running back, defensive end, linebacker. But, people need quarterbacks. There's a chance. I have Haskins on my taxi squad, so you never know.
Sure. The next player, Frank Darby. Baltimore took him at 4-15 on the AFC side, and you got him all the way at the 6-17 in the NFC. Holy shit. Sean submitted a video, so I'll go ahead and cue that up and roll it. Guys, I'm going to edit this out, but I might say something after we play it, right? But just how fucking wild-eyed he looks. Like, holy shit. When I'm flipping through my computer and it's giving me the little preview icons, this is the preview icon.
That's what you see?
He looks absolutely fucking nuts.
I know. This is we're talking about Darby here, right? Not your mom, Sean.
Right.
It's Frank Darby.
Here's Sean.
Hey guys, I was asked to come on and explain why I took Frank Darby a couple of rounds earlier than the Dustin's Panthers did. Well, I don't know. Maybe does this give you a hint? There's another one coming. Don't have it yet. I think you guys can understand where I'm at. I know how to win in this league. I see opportunity. I see Julio Jones getting traded. I see all the other players that are out there. I need somebody who I think could start for me in the next couple of years, or at least be trade bait at some point. And that's what I did. That's what I've done. Peace out.
All right, what do you think about that flex by Sean there?
Yeah, Sean, man, I love it. I love it. I love the fact that he came out guns blazing with the trophy in the background.
Yeah,
talking about Frank Darby, like he's gonna three-peat, here.
Looking all wild-eyed.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm kind of running to get some water down in the basement.
All right.
But yeah, so I think he flexed well. The video was well. The point he made about getting a guy that has an opportunity to show up, and that's kind of part of my strategy too. Was, hey, you know what? He's another body. He's a receiver. He's going to find himself in a good situation with a lot of vacated targets. We've seen Ridley miss time. We've seen Gage miss time. They've got some pretty defined roles. There's kind of some space there for a Julio type role. And I think Darby's a big body guy that can get it. And he's one of the classic big body alpha type receivers that was in this draft. So when I saw him there late, I made some maneuvers to get those picks to scoop him up.
Yeah. And I think the point too about somebody that could be trade bait in the future, I think that's a great point,
You already traded Gage, so now he's my ATL presence.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Okay.
banking on him.
Right. So the next player on the list was Patrick Surtain. He went at 504 in the AFC to Houston, and he went at 310 in the NFC to the New York Giants. Al submitted a video for this. I couldn't get New York to send me anything, despite many promises.
Giants suck.
So let me go ahead. I'll queue up Al's video and we'll roll that.
What's up, y'all? This Big Al, the Houston Texans. I guess the question was asked about my man who we took in the 5th round, Patrick Surtain. I heard that there's a team in the NFC. I think it was the Giants. They took my man Surtain in the 3rd round. Ooh, very, very, very high, very high. Typically, I don't touch cornerbacks until late 4th, middle of the 4th and going. That's usually the position I will get once I've sorted out my team's assessment needs and realize there's really no more surefire starters on the board, a lot of possibilities. Because the thing with cornerbacks, especially the top-rated ones, you know that if they're going to a team that has a need for a cornerback, chances are that they're going to get significant playing time. And with playing time comes opportunity because we know they're going to get tested as rookies. Cornerback is a position you never get the best player. You don't draft Darrelle Revis because rarely does he get balls on his way. It's like Champ Bailey and Deion Sherman, those guys from their prime. They don't get passes thrown to them, which means they don't have opportunity to get points. You get the bums. You get the people that they pick on. You get the people who are prone to pass interference, prone to get peeled, get burnt, because those are the ones who get tackles. So that's why I draft rookie, but you get those late. For example, on our side on the AFC, I took Surtain in the 5th. The Raiders took JC in the 6th. I think Marley went in the 6th or 7th. Asante Samuel Jr. didn't even get drafted, just like Trayvon Diggs last year. Didn't get drafted. He was picked up in a supplemental draft, and he was one of the highest rookie point getters last year in the quarterback position, especially in the defense, because until he got hurt. So that's a plug and play position. You can get those anywhere, but to spend high draft capital, especially when you got Terry Bridgewater on your team. Oh yeah, Bridgewater. I guess he didn't like Mac Jones because he was on the board. Could he got a quarterback? I mean, I would have taken a quarterback before I take, but Bridgewater, yeah. Mac Jones was on the board. I would have taken Mac Jones before I'd taken those cornerbacks, especially I'm going to take 2 of them. So this is my opinion. Hey, you can run your team how you want to. I'm just saying. They just seem kind of high to be doing that. But hey, maybe he knows somebody I don't know. Big Al, we out.
I love everything he said there about the value of the cornerbacks, where you take cornerbacks, and the fact that you don't want the very top tier cornerback because they don't get thrown at. And looking at the Giants draft, gosh, let me go back to it. I want to say they took 2 cornerbacks relatively high. Yeah, back to back. They took 310 Patrick Surtain, and then at 404 they took J.C. Horn.
Yeah, and so the only issue, and I agree completely with what Al said and how you confirmed it. The only concern I have is when I try to lock in my budget for cornerbacks, I'm trying to get minimum salary guys, right? Unless you can get someone that's a significant producer, but it almost seems like it's one of the flukiest positions in football. It's like kicker. Like you just never know when they're going to make a play. So I don't want to spend any capital in it. So I don't hate getting a 3rd round 4-year contract on a guy. I think they go for about $700,000 a year. So it's not terrible. And I think if he thinks someone's going to be on the field 99% of the snaps, that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for players that are on the field every time.
Yeah.
And they have an opportunity to make plays, because what you don't want is a nickel corner who has 2 picks, right, a year, and he's playing 50% of the snaps, and like it's fluky, versus the guy who's out there 99% of the time. He might stumble into something, right?
Yep.
So I think Surtain, the way he was drafted in the NFL, he's going to get a lot of playing time. He already had a pick 6 in the preseason. So I don't hate using those picks to kind of supplement those roles. But I think there was better talent there at that time.
Right. I mean, both of those cornerback picks by the New York Giants, Mac Jones was still on the board.
Nico Collins is on the board.
Yeah.
Nico Collins goes 4-2.
Nico Collins is a great. We'll get into this after when we talk about values, but Nico Collins is on the value list for sure.
Yeah, and for a team like New York who's rebuilding, I think I'm building through young receivers before I'm building through young cornerbacks. But to each their own.
Yeah. So the next player, Davis Mills, he went 508 in the AFC to Cleveland, and he went 709 in the NFC to Seattle. I couldn't get Cleveland for any comments.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But Seattle sent me something. It said,
Love it. Love
I was
it. Now
looking
respond,
for-
now respond to my trade, Seattle. Ron, you know it's getting out there.
Dirty motherfucker.
You don't work that much, buddy. I know you work a lot.
So he sent me something. He said he was looking for a QB that would have potential starting power. Currently, Seattle has Ryan Tannehill on their roster, so new fresh blood was definitely needed. Seattle saw Davis Mills as a steal in the 7th round. Seattle believed the young quarterback in our league definitely deserved to be picked in the draft. So the question is, why did Cleveland pick him in the 5th round? When you review Cleveland's roster, you would see he has Deshaun Watson. So in my opinion, that was not a bad selection, especially since Davis is one of the backups and has been showing strong potential during practice. Also, with Watson going through legal issues, this might be one smart move. Yeah, I think out of the Kellen Mond, the Kyle Trask, the Davis Mills, all these later quarterbacks, I think Mills probably has a higher opportunity to return value, at least this year. Watson hasn't been traded. I mean, I know he hasn't been around. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Watson. He might be in Houston next year. We don't know.
And even if he isn't, I think Tyrod Taylor is the first guy getting the ball. So it's not only does Mills have to fight through a Watson suspension /trade /situation, then he's got to hope, Tyrod gets, his lung punctured again by the doctor.
Tyrod, though, like, I was thinking about this too, like, years ago, big fan of Tyrod, as far as watching him and, like, rooting for him, but then look at him in Cleveland.
I don't think he's good, but I
look
think
at game 1 and last year with the Chargers. I was so excited to watch that game and so disappointed at the actual performance. And so does Mills have a more direct path to starting than we think maybe?
I mean, I'm looking at his numbers in the preseason from last night. He went 10 for 16, I think $141. He may be the opportunistic starter, but the other thing is he good, right? Like, just because a quarterback has a starting role doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy points. And if anything, if you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball with a subpar quarterback in this league, where quarterbacks are scoring 35, 40 points pretty easily, and you got a 20-point dud or a 15-point dud from a guy like Mills, it's a significant disadvantage. So, I mean, he's a complete stay away from me. But I think young quarterbacks who aren't drafted to be the starter are stay away from me. We talked about it with Trash as well. But I think, Mon, you mentioned, he may be interesting because of the way they want to get out of Kirk Cousins' contract, and he's more mobile. He brings a different element to the offense. So for him, he would be probably my preferred late round, not direct starter quarterback if I had to choose one.
Right. Where did Mon go on each side?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Let's see. AFC. He went 507 as a Colts.
507. Okay, so I'm assuming he probably went late too. Yeah, because we had Mac Jones go 410, like you mentioned before. Mon went 513 to Minnesota. Yeah, I thought Minnesota got him.
That's pretty close. So the next player on the list is Chris Evans, running back for Cincinnati. I took him at 509 on the AFC side, and Philly John took him at 712. Philly John's actually on this list twice. He sent in a great video where he talks about both of his picks. So I'm going to cue that up and we will roll it.
All right, I'm excited about this one.
So Chris wants me to talk about players that I got in the 7th round versus 2 players that went in the 5th round because of the AFC. Well, Chris, Billy John doesn't play by your rules. Matter of fact, he doesn't play by anybody's rules but his own. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to talk about the NFC and how they were asleep at the wheel and allowed me to grab these 2 players that you guys grabbed in the 5th round, in the 7th round. Who are these players, you ask? Chris Evans, picked in the 6th round of the NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. And Des Fitzpatrick, who was picked in the 4th round by the Titans. Now, you can sit there, NFC, and say, oh, yeah, these players are going to change the world. I don't think so. Maybe they won't. But thanks for giving me the chance to find out. And I hope I do. Look, we all know Joe Mixon isn't getting any younger. You can sit there and tell me about Samaj Perine as being the guy if Mixon gets hurt. Look, he had 1 good game. Okay, that doesn't make him a rock star. If he was that good, Washington never would have got rid of him. And the 2 other teams before he went to Cincinnati wouldn't have got rid of him.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
1 good game does not make him a stud. If you've looked at Chris Evans, if you've seen his highlight tapes, if you read his history, that's a solid pick. And then let's talk about Des Fitzpatrick. Oh, John, he's behind Julio. He's behind A.J. Brown. Oh, he's behind King Henry. Oh, he's behind. Oh, it doesn't matter who he's behind. Okay, he's going to develop. Those are some good people to be behind. Some good wide receivers to learn from. So NFC, thank you for being asleep at the wheel and allowing me to pick those 2 players up in the 7th round, because the AFC was too scared and had to jump on and pick them up in the 5th round. The other guy, Nwajibu, whatever his name is, from Minnesota, hit or miss, doesn't matter to me. In 3 years, we're going to either look back at this and look at this video and go, Billy John, what the fuck were you thinking? Or we're going to look back and go, God damn, Philly John, we were asleep at the wheel. Good on you. We'll see. I'm counting on the later. So there you go, Chris. There's your homework assignment that you needed done, that you had to call everybody out on Father's Day about. Here it is. Post it. And NFC, again, thank you.
I love it. I love his energy.
That was
Oh
legit.
God, there's nothing better than John on video here.
Yeah, he's a fucking rock star.
So I'll go ahead and kind of recap what I was seeing at this time, because we were both in an interesting point of view with Green Bay. I think had all the picks and he was shopping them all. And so it was kind of me and John in this little battle, because we saw all these talented names out there still on the offensive side. And I really like Chris Evans. I think Chris Evans is a steal. And obviously I traded him Mixon last year. So I think it's the Mixon, Chris Evans, backup handcuffs combo that he wanted. He was attracted to. But I think potentially he has some standalone value. Now, where I will give him some shit is because I just noticed he put Des Fitzpatrick on his practice squad. So he's basically giving him away for a 6th and a 7th right now. So that doesn't what is it? Ooze confidence in his long-term, projection.
Right.
But I love the video. Glad John took the time.
What is John's cap situation like? One of the things I noticed in the AFC, a lot of teams really hurting for cap space. Probably the most hamstrung in the AFC would be the Browns. And they drafted Josh Palmer in the 3rd round and slapped him on the taxi like a few minutes later. And within minutes, I had claimed him off the taxi squad. So I was starting to look through the NFC taxi squad before we did the show, and I'm like, I wonder if there's any other teams over there that are dangling guys that they really shouldn't because of cap. Is that something you're seeing over there? I didn't get all the way through the list.
I think there is some of that, and I think I'm guilty of it doing it myself right now. There's a couple guys that I'm kind of nervous about putting on there that I have to. I'm within like a $2 million cap. And I got $10 million to make up. That's the difficult part. Everybody's looking at their cap number today, going, "Oh, I'm 3 million under." Well, yeah, but we've got a $10 million soft cap buffer right now,
Right.
and that's going to go away. It's going to evaporate a lot of that. So I think we're gonna find a lot of teams putting people on taxi squad that shouldn't be there strictly from salary cap standpoint. And I think you're hitting it on the head. Any of those first, second, third round picks that are not quite, getting the camp buzz, not really the day one production, they're going to risk putting them on there to try to, if they get a first and a second for a top 5 pick, probably not great value. So it's going to be a risk. There's going to be some balancing. This cap year is screwing up a lot of the team strategies.
I know I've personally got guys on it that I'm not comfortable having on it right now.
Exactly. I say Kylan Hill, I'll mention him, that the Green Bay guy who's been blowing up, he's sitting on there, and it's like, I got him in the 7th round, like Mr. Irrelevant almost. And it's like, I don't want to give him away because we've seen what happened with Aaron Jones, who got poached, and led Chicago to a championship. So it's nerve. There's definitely some nerve wracking, and it's only going to get worse as the season approaches.
Yeah. And I see that there are some guys on taxi squads in the AFC that I would snipe if I wasn't so cap strung.
Exactly. That's the other thing. I just
we got that working in our favor.
I sniped Irv Smith, and the only thing that was stopping me from doing it was the cap. And I'm like, God, he's 1.8 or something. I'm like, that's so much money. Feel so broke. But yeah, I hear you.
So I think Chris Evans has a great opportunity. He Gio Bernard is out of town now, and they need a pass catching back. And Mixon, I hate to say, I don't want to say injury prone, but all running backs get dinged up, nicked up. I think there's definitely everybody else on that roster, I think, has proven that they're not the guy.
Yeah. Chris Evans, he's got a skill set to carve out every, a third down role at least to start the season.
Right.
And I think he can fill in for an injured Mixon like Gio has done in the past and provide some immediate upside. So
Right. So the second player there that John talked about, Des Fitzpatrick, Miami submitted a video for that. So thank you, Miami. And I'll cue that up and play it.
What up, XFF? This your boy here, Miami J. Here to discuss the video you guys just saw of Des Fitzpatrick.
Sorry. He also submitted a highlight reel of Des Fitzpatrick, but I didn't play. So that's what he's referring to.
Drafted in the 5th round of this year's rookie draft.
Love it. Love the enthusiasm.
The reason why I drafted him was kind of happenstance because I was watching the NFL Network, and it was right around the Julio Jones trade, and I knew I was coming up for a pick, so I was looking for a player. So they were talking about the wide receiving core for Tennessee Titans, and the NFL Network, a couple commentators talking about they put out a bolo alert for this dead Des Fitzpatrick. So they talked about how good he might be. So I did some research on him, good speed, good hands, good route runner, 6 foot, about 210, 215. So I like what I saw, like what I heard. So I went on ahead and drafted him. I'm not sure why the NFC drafted him the way where they did. My guess is, he's a copycat. Me and him got a history together, going way, way back, dealing with players. And I'm still scarred by that after all these years. So that's another drunken time for another drunken story. That's the reason why I drafted him. So we'll see how he does. He's up there. He's behind Josh Reynolds right now, which kind of sucks because I got him Josh Reynolds in another league. So we'll see. But I like him, and I hope he does well. So peace. I'll see you guys in the fall, and good luck.
The kind of guys you want to be drafting late, these developmental guys that have the size and the potential. So
Exactly. And yeah, he saw the thinness on the depth chart with only having AJ Brown with Davis leaving the New Jersey in New York, and that free agent deal. And then all of a sudden, obviously Julio gets traded, and that kind of puts a damper on Dez for maybe the immediate future, but think a long-term stash along the lines what Philly John was saying was I like his opportunity long-term. He's got a good quarterback with Tannehill there. And Julio is kind of there for the shortness of it. And I think that's why John threw him on his practice squad now, because I think the Julio signing kind of brought him down tier in value.
It kind of reminds me of the Frank Darby argument for Frank Darby,
Exactly. No, I think those are two guys, the two same. When I was in between the Darby pick, Fitzpatrick was the only one that was out there, or an opportunity to be out there. And
right.
Yeah.
Next guy on the list, Emir Smith-Marset, wide receiver for Minnesota Vikings. He got taken at 5'10" by Cincinnati, and in the NFC, he got taken at 704 by Minnesota. I couldn't get anything from Minnesota, even talking to him yesterday about it. But and I'm not going to give Cincy any shit because he gave us several videos already. He was on this list 3 times. But Emir Smith-Marset, I think, even at 5'10", I think that's good value. The depth chart is short there. Not a lot of players ahead of him. And yeah, I liked his profile. I actually, I got a list of snipes that we were going to talk about after, we ran through these videos, and Smith-Marset is one of the players that I felt like I got sniped on. So yeah,
I think anytime you're one injury away, like a Thielen injury away from being thrust into the opening lineup with opposite JJ, it's a great situation for a young guy to be in.
Yeah. Player on this list with the disparity, Nazarul Dean. What's this guy's first name? Hamza Nazarul Dean. It's Hamza. I drafted him at 5'14" on the AFC, and the commission actually drafted him at 4.07 on the NFC side. And that was interesting. I was looking through the drafts. He picked both of the Jet linebackers safety conversion players this year, which I thought was interesting. What was the other guy? Jamie and Sherwood. Yeah, but the two, I was looking at both of them, Nazarul Dean and Sherwood, and I preferred Nazarul Dean, so that's who I took. I think the guy's I think he just plays super fierce, and with there being, I think, some fair questions there in New York about the linebacker depth. I thought it was a good shot to take on a guy.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know what they're gonna get from Mosley, and he was a big addition 2 years ago via free agency from Baltimore, and then he came up, was out for the year with the injury, so not really sure where he is. Blake Cashman was another guy that they drafted a couple years ago that I had for a while that was playing in the Mosley role, but he didn't really do well. So I think there's opportunity, to your point.
Yeah, and so I know Carl Lawson just got hurt, but Jared Davis also just got hurt.
Gerald Davis, really?
Jared Davis is another New York Jet linebacker.
Interesting.
So
yeah,
guys are going down there.
They're going down. He's moving up the depth chart as we speak.
Yeah, so that's good. Next player, Chancey Golston. So Koo took him at 5'17" in the AFC side, and you managed to snag him at 7'10" in the NFC. This is a guy that I was kind of excited for and would have taken late like that. But as everything, I keep trying to read up on this guy, and I think he hasn't been able to do much, right? Hasn't he been hurt through most of camp?
Yeah, that's the impression that I've gotten right now. He's a no-go. There's been no progress. It's one of those worst case scenario situations. Anytime you draft somebody and they fall into a black hole early on in camp, you're just, it's going to be a taxi stash at this point.
Right. Koo did submit a video, so let me cue that up.
Yeah, and it's not an hour long, which I'm surprised.
Hello, XFF. This is the Las Vegas Raiders
Rinku speaking about the draft, 2021 draft selection for the Raiders, 5th round pick, Chauncey Golston, defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys. I really love the player landing that position, the defensive end lineup in the draft. I saw a lot of players in that position, the edge of the defensive end, get taken in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds that I thought were way overdrafted. Players that belong on the Colts. The Colts have tried 4, 5, 6 years to get a sack high. They can't pan one out. Toure was in there. Jabal Sheard's in there. They've had to go buy it with Justin Houston and free agency or trade for it with Buckner. So I don't trust any of those guys they've developed. The Buffalo Bills have tried. They had 2 players that were drafted, and they've tried to develop on the D-line. They don't have a guy that's gotten sacks, 7, 8, 9 sacks in about 4, 5, 6 seasons. Jerry Hughes hasn't done it. Darius was several seasons ago. And the guys they brought in, Trent Murphy, they've tried to develop some guys and draft them. I don't have any faith in those guys either. So the development pipeline for those players was not really great. I saw them drafted higher up in the 5th round. Landing Chauncey Golston for the Cowboys was fabulous for me. Its value. He's got massive hands, almost 11 inches long, shirt sleeve, 35-inch arms. I think his big claim to fame was at the Senior Bowl, played inside. And new coach Dan Quinn knows how to get guys from the inside. Grady Jarrett's the example, the NASCAR package on the inside. And they have opportunity. Aldon Smith last year, before that, Michael Bennett, and before that, Robert Quinn. There are a lot of snaps to be had at defensive end. There are tackles to be made. So Dallas has opportunity for him to come in, and he's a 3rd round selection in reality. So getting him in the 5th in an XFF draft, I thought was a huge value in the steal, and that's why we made the selection. I know he went later and on the other conference, but I thought he should have been drafted ahead of some names that were taken in earlier rounds in the AFC conference. So we love the pick. I'm looking forward to him getting production.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled that he's thrilled, honestly, because what Koo says is gold. You know, I think he's got a good track record of nailing some of these players in their production profiles. So when I saw that he was still available in the 7th round, I had to snag him up, and I was happy to do so. So I'm hoping he gets back on the field and we see something from him late 2021. Maybe 2022 is more of a realistic target to get some, weekly starts in.
Right. Last player on the list, Jonathan Cooper. So he went 703 to Pittsburgh in the AFC and 406 to the Giants on the NFC. This is one of those outside linebackers that we were talking about earlier. He seems like he's been doing.
It's your boy, Skinny Penis.
Well, there was some concern about him. He'd had some kind of a surgery or something, but he came back pretty quick, and he's been playing in the preseason and looking good. So 706, 703, of course it's 3 rounds later. That's pretty good value there. But what do you think about him, the Giants, again, who we had all this cornerback discussion about earlier, taking the OLB at 406?
Yeah.
When again, Mac Jones was still on the board.
I mean, the Giants came into this draft clearly with a strategy, and I think where they may have seen the void from the last year in Denver and the linebacking crew, when they surprisingly released Davis. Davis kind of right before the year was coming off his best season ever as the middle linebacker and was just crushing it and almost led the league in tackles. And then all of a sudden they just let him go, and he goes and finds himself in Minnesota in a part-time role. So I think maybe the Denver linebacking crew, just the legacy there with Chubb and some of those guys, maybe the name value and the positional value there became too much for him to pass up. But and I think he's got a point. He's got to take shots at the linebacker position, and the Giants had a bunch of picks, and I think they just kept taking shots, and we'll see how it works out for them.
Yeah, and that's definitely fair. I mean, the more darts you can throw, absolutely the better, because we're all guessing.
Yeah.
Even the coaches and the scouts are guessing.
I mean, the NFL GMs are guessing. And,
absolutely.
I tell you a funny story real quick. I don't want to get too off topic, but one of my best friends in Baltimore here worked for the Ravens for many years, 7 years. He has a Super Bowl ring. It's pretty cool. But we went out to New Jersey and we did this marathon run together. And a bunch of the scouts from the Ravens came there and met us, and we all hung out that night. And those guys don't know shit. Let me be honest.
Shots
They're the kids. They were my age. They were scouts. They were traveling. They're just doing the most annoying job, and they would talk about players that I knew, and they would talk about them less intelligently than people I can find on fantasy Twitter, or even in some of these circles. They're not experts. The GMs, these coaches, these scouts, they're not experts. They don't know what they're doing. They're not smarter than anybody else. They're watching the same shit we're watching. We're just more invested from a granular level where we don't have to put in notes. We don't have to, spend so much time on each prospect. I mark them on my spreadsheet and be done with them, right? Like I like or I don't like. They need to spend hours putting together reports around a prospect that's worthless. So their time management around these prospects is not as well managed as ours is, because we can just bounce. They've got to thoroughly examine these guys. So I think you nailed it on the head, and that was part of my story. It's just I don't feel confident in what the GMs are doing. It's all a guesswork. It's all a gut feeling to some extent. Everybody knows the winners. The losers and the mid-tier guys, it's a guessing game, and whoever gets lucky, is going to reap the rewards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So reaches to me, as far as specific, I didn't get too much into it. It was super specific. I mean, we talked kind of about the OLBs. We talked about these mid-tier QBs that probably aren't even worth drafting most of the time. Talk about these mid-tier running backs. One of the reaches to me that stood out was the defensive end Kuntz for he plays for Houston, I think. But I know Al took him at 515 in the AFC. And he didn't go till the second round in the supplemental draft on the NFC side.
Wow.
I thought that was something of a reach there that really stood out to me.
Well, mine might be a little bit more polarizing. I feel like maybe Devontae Smith at 9 to Seattle might have been a bit of a reach there. I feel like Parsons was on the board. You're talking about Elijah Moore on the board, even Carter, Trey Lance, Bateman. I don't know. Maybe I'm just down on Smith, but I think there was a lot of different players that could have been picked there that have a lot safer floor. Maybe not the same upside that Smith has, but I think that using that pick on Smith is just feels like bust waiting to happen. And that's not really what you want to do at 1-9 in any draft.
Yeah.
I think there was bigger, locked in positional value that could have been had there at number 9. So that for me, that was kind of the biggest reach, at least in the first couple rounds.
What? Okay, so I'm gonna do one. Pitts. Kyle Pitts. I mean, really, I don't know. I'm not convinced.
So where did he go in the AFC? Because 1-2 in the NFC.
I want to say he went 2. I want to say. I'll confirm that.
Okay, because I know Arizona took him at 2, and that
he
was
went 2. The Patriots took him at 2.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
holy shit.
I don't want to pick on him too much, because understand that it's a tight end premium league now, and so that kind of elevates him a little bit. If you don't have a tight end, it's very difficult to compete with some of those tight end heavy teams, the Kelce's and Wallers of the world. So I get it from a build standpoint. I just think he needs to be so elite to pay dividends for the draft stock.
Right.
And I just, thank you. Sorry, the little one's home. Thank you. I just can't see him. I just can't see him achieving what he needs to achieve to pay back his ADP and the spend there.
That's exactly my thoughts on it, and why I have to pick him as, I don't know, possibly the biggest reach in the entire draft. I mean, if he had gone 1-9, okay, I wouldn't be excited about it. I don't know, but 102 on both sides,
Yeah. No,
like you said, unless he is Kelce or Waller or Kittle, then it's a bust.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
And
Because we know Jamar Chase. We know Etienne is going to be good. Trevor Lawrence is going to be good. These are all guys behind that pick that are going to return value.
Yeah. So I think I gotta say Pitts, and that might be controversial. It definitely seems the community is split on that. But
He is he's the Tim Tebow.
God, did you see
as people love him, as people hate him.
Did you watch any of that? Did you see his horrible blocks?
Oh my God, yeah, I seen it.
Falling down.
I couldn't ignore it. It was all over.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Okay.
I give him a break. If they send me out there, I wouldn't do much better, but
yeah.
I just wouldn't get that chance. Luckily.
He looks good.
I know. I wouldn't mind looking like him. He's stocky. He's built.
Yeah. Values. What stood out to you as some values through the draft?
I mean, I think looking in the first round, I mean, I think that's where you're really going to get the maximum value. I think Trey Sermon ends up being a value at 8. I don't know. I think with Javonte, Etienne, and Sermon, I think the running back premium that we have in XFF is so huge that if you can get a 3-down grinder, a guy like Trey who can come in and run in a San Francisco offense behind that line, who's made just basically anybody get 5 yards a carry, and pair him with Lance, and I think his upside is RB1 upside weekly in that offense, and if you can get that at 8 overall, I mean, I love that pick. It may not be the most shiny. I think people might say, yeah, that's actually fair value, but I think what he could become could, cultiple, or what's the word I'm looking for? Forget that word. He could vault himself into the top tier of running back out of this class, and
Right.
That's significant value at 1.8.
I think discussing quarterbacks earlier, Zach Wilson going at 3-1 to New Orleans, I think was great value. I still don't know if I'm a Zach Wilson believer. Looking at in college when he faced tough defenses, his numbers fell off, and just about probably every NFL defense is better than anything he faced in college. So I'm kind of on the fence about him. I mean, he's looked good in the preseason, but who's he really been playing up against in the preseason? So I'm not on the Zach Wilson bandwagon, but I think to get him in the league at 3-1 was good value.
I agree. I think if anything, if you've got a starting quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years, I mean, that's pretty much guaranteed on these rookie deals. He's going to get 3 years. Right. That's that 4th year where they're like, do we want to give him the 5th year option, or we want to cut bait a year early? Right. So I think you've got 3 years of production. He's performed well in the minimum preseason games. I think they've done a good job of getting him some young talent around him, keeping some of the familiar faces also. But it's a team on the up and up. And so 3-1. If you can get a long-term starting quarterback, even if he returns points in like the Jared Goff, area, I think it's a good value.
Yeah. And along those same lines, San Fran getting Mac Jones at 4-10.
Hey,
yeah, exactly.
That's pretty good.
I think both those quarterbacks, based on, if you just do the compare and contrast of Trevor Lawrence at 1.7, and then you think of Mac at 4.10, is there that much variance between the two players and what they're going to offer you? I don't know. Trevor could be transcendent, but if he's not, you're talking about that. It makes Trevor look like a very big reach if Mac performs well.
Right. Talking about linebackers earlier and the linebacker creep, I think Ernest Jones was a good value on both sides. I didn't write down exactly where he went. I want to say he went late 3rd in each side.
Yeah, since I was on the linebacker wagon early, he went 314 on the NFC to Washington.
Okay, he went 306 AOC.
Yeah, I was watching him, and I was thinking about, Parsons. Obviously, Jones didn't come into play for me that early in the draft in my mind, but he was one of the guys that was on my short list of backup plans if I needed to reach for a guy if I couldn't get Parsons in the first. So I thought they got pretty good value there. The Rams have really been like kind of like a linebacker factory. They just like stick in guys. They have good production, but they seem to turn things around so quickly. And so who knows what the role would be? He might have an every down role coming in.
Yeah.
Though he also might not touch the field. So
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's hard to predict. But I like the guy. I like what he offers. I'm not sure where his 21 season is going to end up.
Mm-hmm. I think, again, talking about those mid-tier running backs and how many of them went off and where they went. I'm sorry. I also had Pete Warner and Derek Barnes there is third and fourth round linebackers that I thought were good value. On these running backs, Ramondre Stevenson on both sides, I think great value. He went 410 to Baltimore on our side and 414 in the NFC to Minnesota. And I think that was a great pickup. Another late running back. I think Baltimore got this guy also, Caleb Huntley, the Atlanta running back, right? Javian Hawkins, I think, is the other Atlanta running back that got picked much higher. Where did Hawkins go? He got picked.
Yeah, he went 4 or 5 in the NFC.
Yeah.
But he's like he's a scat back.
Hawkins went at 313 in the AFC. But Caleb Huntley has been looking. I mean, we didn't know this then, but it looks like Caleb Huntley's definitely going to have a bigger role. But even then, I think it's 7-16. I mean, that's like next to the last pick, and I think that was a great pickup. We mentioned Collins earlier as being a good value.
Yep. Falcons getting him at 4-2.
Freiermuth. How about Freiermuth, man?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to get excited because he caught 2 touchdowns on 2 catches last night. He could end up being a steal in this class. We'll see how big Ben treats him. He's been known to feed tight ends, but they still do have the veteran there, right? Cooks down there. I think it's Cooks who's there. So I think that maybe takes a little bit of the shine off.
Eric Ebron.
Ebron. Yeah, I get those 2 confused. I literally have both of those in most of my best ball leagues.
Cooks is
one of those 2 guys will hit.
Chargers. Yeah, right. But just looking at Freiermuth going 303 versus 102 for Pitts. I mean, that's who knows what it'll actually turn out to be, But I would rather take Freiermuth at 303 than Pitts at 102.
Yes, when you do that comparison and their career trajectories, that we might look back at that variance in draft and go, wow, Freiermuth was a steal, or more likely kind of Pitts was a reach.
Right. Well, that was really the list that I had for values. Is there anybody else that you saw or any?
I mean, I think Nico, we kind of touched on a little bit, and I also think, not to toot my own horn, but I think getting Trey Lance at 2-1 ahead of, behind a few of those other quarterbacks, behind, Fields and Trevor, I think that was pretty good. I feel confident about that. And I'll shout out the Bears. I think
The Bears.
Elijah Moore seems to be a really good player in New York, and he could be the number 1 eventually. I think Davis is number 1 today, but eventually he could step into that role or at least be a supplemental guy. And so I like that pick at 13 as well.
Anybody snipe you when you were?
So it's funny you say snipe. So I picked 1-1, so no one was sniping me there, luckily.
Right.
And then 110, I basically knew I was getting Parsons, and when Seattle made the Smith pick, I felt good, so I didn't get sniped there. Carter was someone that was on my board, and I thought if he fell further into the second, that I might trade up to get him. He went 116 in New Orleans, so kind of consider that a snipe because I had my eyes on him, like getting back in and getting him, but that didn't come to fruition. other than that, I mean, I got Lance, I got Jalen Phillips, who I thought was the #1 DE on the board, on top of getting Parsons and Harris, who I thought were #1 linebacker, #1 running back. So I'd say pretty smooth draft for me. I nailed my guys. I'd say Carter was the only guy that I thought would fall, and I didn't get a chance to get back into the draft and get him.
Right. Yeah, for me, the first round went pretty much like I wanted it to. I shipped out Nick Kwiatkowski, thank God, and Fred Warner to Q to grab his first. And so I had the 108 and the 109, and I took Sermon and Jamin Davis.
Gotcha, bitch.
And then I didn't have a pick. I didn't really start picking again until the 4th somewhere, I think, 3rd or 4th. But in that round, these dart throw guys, so the Bengals sniped me at least 3 times on Baron Browning, Elijah Mitchell, and Smith Marset. The Ravens sniped me hard on Ramondre Stevenson. And then Miami with Onwuzurike, the D tackle that went to Detroit. My D tackle room is pretty weak. And Christian Barmore went way high. We went the 2nd on each side, I think. And then Onwuzurike fell to 503 in the AFC. And yeah, I was looking at him hard, and Miami sniped him before me. And then Kansas City got me once with the tight end Harris in Las Vegas. It's reading all these articles about how they use this whole analytics crew to analyze this guy, and I don't know, just all this crazy shit that they were doing out there in Las Vegas when they were scouting this guy, and how they picked him up because they had such a vision for this guy. And yeah, he got signed. So I had so many picks in the back end of the draft. You know what I mean? That yeah, I think it happened to me a lot because of that. But
yeah, that'll happen when you have those guys that have such a wide range of variance for being picked, where they could go late 2nd, they could go late 4th.
Right.
And you just got your guys honed in, and then some of the other teams just see that value falling and they snag it. That's
and when you got 3 or 4 picks in a round, you got high odds of getting sniped a decent amount. You know what I mean? So yeah, the back end of the draft, and I even was trading in, and yeah, I had a lot of picks in that range. So what about, let's talk best drafts.
Why can't a heterosexual guy tell a heterosexual guy that he thinks is
Draft.
fly?
AFC, NFC. I made a top 3 on each side, and then I ranked them. And I gotta say, man, I spent probably 45 minutes on the NFC coming up with my list. The AFC, I was done in the AFC in 5 minutes. I don't know what there was. I made my initial list for best draft just looking through the NFC and making a list of drafts that I liked on first look. I had 8 teams on it. And then I whittled that 8 down to 5, and then out of that 5, I came up with my top 3. So the 8 was Detroit, Minnesota, Washington. I know we've teased them a bit, but the Giants, Arizona, Atlanta, yourself, and New Orleans. And out of that 8, I wound up whittling it down to 5. And then, yeah, my top 3, you at 1, Washington at 2, and the Saints at 3. And that wound up being my top 3 NFC drafts.
Well, nice. I mean, first, thank you. I thought I nailed it with the players that I got. I didn't have a lot of picks. You can see in the mid-round, no 3rds, no 4ths, no 5ths, but closed well in the 6th and 7th, and made a strong impact in the first 2 rounds. And I agree with you on the other draft. So I guess my NFC top 3, I like my draft, obviously. Excluding that, I like what Minnesota did with Sermon and St. Brown, getting Palmer late and Stevenson late. Also, Mond, we talk about, he might be one of the upside QBs late.
Very
and then
solid, full of value. Good.
Exactly.
Not really reaches anywhere in this draft.
Yeah, no, just a solid draft. I also like what Washington did. Getting Chase, getting a couple linebackers, getting Firmo, Also the linebacker, your guy that you talked about in the fourth. So I think he had a strong draft as well. And then New Orleans, I was kind of between New Orleans and Detroit. I think Detroit with Rondé, and Etienne and Fields. But then you got, New Orleans got Carter, you got Zach Wilson real late. You got Amari Rogers, who I really like in Green Bay. So just because he's in my division, I'll give the slight edge to New Orleans.
Right. And when on first look, New Orleans was my number one. But it was going back through and kind of after the Amuzariki pick, the Cornell Powell, the I don't know, going through the back half of the draft, it was a little shakier to me.
Yeah, I mean, he got Long and he got Cisco, which I think has some talent, but he definitely tapped that tight end a few different times.
Yeah, hey, throw more darts at the board. So yeah, Detroit, I really like two, ETN, Fields, Rondell Moore, Pete Werner. He was guilty of taking JV and Hawkins at 405, but he got, Brevin Jordan, Deo Odeyingbo, who I know he's been hurt. I drafted him too. I'm hopeful that when he comes back, he'll have an impact and a role there. So yeah, it was a lot harder for me for some reason on the NFC side to whittle down who I thought the top three were. Then AFC, my initial list only had 4 on it. And I got to give a shout out to Baltimore. They didn't start picking till late, like the 4th round. But I thought in spite of that, they had a really solid draft. KC and Las Vegas, they each only had like 2 or 3 picks, but I thought they used them very well, the little bit that they had. But my initial 4 for the top drafts were Cincinnati, New England, Indianapolis, and Houston. And I wound up whittling that down to Cincy 1, Indy 2, and Houston 3. Cam, he always drafts really well. I mean, he did it again. He had a ton of picks in the first 2 rounds. He's the snake charmer. I don't know how he does it, but he did it again. Congrats to Cam. Indy, I really liked how active Indy was this year. He was trading in a lot, just very active, moving up and down the draft board. And I thought he had really solid picks all up and down the board. And my number 3 is Houston. And I know that we teased him a little bit for Kuntz, but that was his last pick of the draft. And yeah, I thought he had a pretty solid draft. Look, you got Zach Wilson, Rashad Bateman, which, you got Michael Carter, Terrace Marshall, who I like a lot, Diami Brown, we talked about, Tommy Trimble. You got Patrick Surtain at 504. So yeah, I thought it was pretty solid stuff from Al.
Yeah, I think just looking at what Al had to work with, without a first rounder, to come out of there with Wilson, Bateman, Carter, Marshall, and Brown, it's pretty phenomenal stuff. So he nailed those picks. So I definitely like his draft. I'd have to go Cincinnati number 1 though. Getting Parsons, getting Javonte, getting Zach Collins, and also St. Brown, in the 2nd. I like those picks. And then I agree with you with Indianapolis. They were very methodical. Najee, Waddle. They got a good running back, good receiver. Double pumped with Moore, Kadarius Toney in the 2nd, and then Gainwell and Fairmouth, in the 3rd. So I think they did a good job, and even took Mond, late in the 5th, and Estridge could have some role in Seattle. So I agree with you. I think those were the top 3 for me as well.
Worst was hard too. I mean, like I said, I had 8 in contention for the best on NFC, right? And that only leaves 8. And some of them I didn't hate, some of them I didn't think it was fair. Like Tampa Bay didn't have a single pick, so you just default him to the worst draft, but that's not fair. I didn't pick an absolute worst, but the only 3 that I could even really put down was Dallas, the 49ers, and LA. And even then, with Dallas, I don't think that they did anything wrong. Let me pull up what they did in the initial draft.
Yeah.
It was Tommy Trimble at 317. I mean, that's a dart throw. And, there's nothing wrong with that pick. It's the only one he had in the entire draft. LA did Jalen Waddle at 106. Then they didn't start picking till the 5th, 6th, and 7th. Tutu Atwell, Eric Stokes, Divine Diablo, John Bates, Michael Carter, the safety. I mean, meh, you know. The 49ers, I think, had one of the best steals of the draft, getting Mac Jones there. But Trey McKitty, Caleb Farley's been getting some good talk. But, you know, there's a couple cornerbacks and a 7th round linebacker, you know. So, I don't know, not terribly strong drafts there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because a few teams didn't have a lot of picks, didn't have a lot to work with on the NFC side. But I don't know, maybe you can point the finger at Green Bay a little bit.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
I mean, they took...
You know, I thought about that too, honestly.
Gainwell in the 2nd might be a bit of a reach. The linebacker,
I thought
Gainwell
at 12.
And
JOK is like, he took him as the number 2 linebacker off the board.
Yeah, so I'd say JOK was kind of a reach for who was available and his positionary need. I thought maybe
Jabril Cox, like, what is Cox going to do this year? I mean,
yeah, and then Trask. So I felt like someone who had significant draft capital who just didn't make their team any better, I would lean towards Green Bay.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Absolutely. Probably, I hate to say the worst, but probably the worst there. Between the number of picks, where they were, and who they wound up being. Garrett Wallow is a linebacker. I mean, I think I got him near the end of the 7th. The AFC, Demetric Felton, Cleveland running back. Like, this guy's 3rd or 4th if he makes the roster in Cleveland. Jarrett Patterson. Yeah.
I mean, Patterson might end up being the best player he picked.
Yeah. From
the and he's a backup. He's a backup. He needs injury.
Right. So, yeah, I think Green Bay stands out for sure. AFC side might stand out to you as...
Yeah, I'm looking through it. I mean, again, there's a few teams that didn't have a lot of pick. Vegas didn't have much. Jacksonville didn't have much. So it's hard to kind of judge them on their late round picks. And I guess the teams that had early picks, I mean, you know, New England went Pitts early on, but then they double tap with Chase at 3. So kind of made up for a little bit, blending some of the risk there. I mean, the early pick on Zach Wilson, Bateman, he made up for it with Carter and Marshall. I love that Houston run. I mean, I'm not seeing anything that's jumping off at me.
Oh, the Browns.
Cleveland. Yeah, so their 2nd round pick, they went with the linebacker there.
An outside linebacker. I mean, I don't hate Amari Rodgers, but they went double outside linebackers. Nico Collins, we talked about being a value.
And Palmer and Rodgers and Collins.
He drafted Palmer, and I sniped him like immediately.
And then he got Mills a little late, who had some upside. So I mean, there isn't a significant loser, I think, on the AFC side.
How about Tennessee?
Let's see, Tennessee. Hawkins with 3rd, and then Schwartz. Yeah, I mean, did he improve his team? Probably not, but he's got a couple taxi squad flyers there.
Yeah.
But I mean, he didn't have a lot of capital. I mean,
no, exactly. And there was definitely some odd draft distribution this year. Like you said, like Tennessee barely had any. The Bills had 1. Jacksonville had 2. Raiders had 2. Yeah, the Chiefs had 4. And I think they did well with what they had.
Buffalo had 1. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah. So, I think AFC is pretty hard to find like a worst draft. And it just kind of feels bad to pick one.
Again, worse in terms of, you know, not my personal best. I would have made other selections. We'll say.
Right. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Unless anything else.
No, I just want to say thanks again, Chris, for putting this all together. I think this is the type of stuff the league needs. And to all the owners out there that took the time to submit the videos, submit the responses, you know, this stuff is good. This stuff feeds us. It feeds the league, gets the momentum going. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I could do this with you. And, you know, good luck as we round into preseason week 3 here next week, and the games will be on in a couple weeks. So
Yeah,
go
absolutely.
XFF.
And thanks for coming on. And like you said, thanks to everybody that submitted content. I really like the place the league is at right now as a total. You know, there's a lot of cross conference friendships and closeness, and it feels much more like a community and less like, you know, adversarial. Or I've even got some leagues where like I have found out in newer leagues I'm in that I'm in other leagues with some of these guys, but the leagues are so dead that I had no idea that I was even in the same league. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
I've
that's
joined
crazy.
another fairly active league, and I'm finding that some of these other guys are in these dead leagues with me, and I never even knew it, you know? So yeah, I like doing stuff like this. I like that we're having a lot more of it. I like the Zoom drafts the past couple of years, you know. Unfortunate that we've had to do it that way, but I think it's actually been good for building relationships in the league. So
Yeah,
thanks
agreed,
again
man.
for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
All right, have a good one.
You too. There, Chris.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.